The final thing on my list that I wanted to talk about, and this is important too. Oh, hi, Steve. How you doing?
Oh, hey. Yeah, I see. It's really important. Yeah.
Staring to his little baby blues
boy.
right there. Oh,
Hey,
boy. You
look
can
at
tell
that.
we got another thing coming
Oh,
up.
man.
Anyway, this is not a trailer. This actually was an announcement by DC that occurred over the weekend during the DC fandom. And it was that Superman was getting a slogan change, which was pretty crazy when I saw the article on this. And as we all know, Superman's slogan is truth, justice, and the American way. Well, they came out over the weekend and announced that they are now changing it to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. And there has been a lot of reactions and response to this. In certain ways, I'm actually pleasantly surprised at how many different types of people from different places have come forward and have expressed how they feel about it. And I gotta say, like in terms of everyone that I have seen making their comments known publicly and that sort of thing, that there's a lot of people that are not happy about this. And I sat down and just really thought about it because like for me, like I'm an interesting case in the sense that I'm not a diehard Superman comic book reader. You know, I collect certain Superman comics, but I'm not one who knows all this crazy lore inside and out and everything else. However, I'm a very big Superman fan in terms of the character itself, what it represents, the films like Christopher Reeve, love all the Superman films. And even Henry Cavill as Superman, love that. So like it's interesting because Superman lives in my personal world in more of a film capacity. But having said that, I do have knowledge when it comes to like how the character was created and also like how it fits into our pop culture in America as well as the rest of the world. So I wanted to kind of go down this list. I made a list just because I didn't want to forget about anything in particular, because I think that this is actually important. And I get it. Like there are certain people out there that perhaps don't care for Superman, and that's perfectly fair. And, you know, some people don't really like having the Boy Scout superhero so much. And some people think that maybe Superman is more of like a hero from the past, right? Like maybe he's more outdated and needs to be modernized or something like that in order to maintain some semblance of legitimacy. But the first thing that I have on my list here is the term American way. We were kids from the 80s where like anytime we watched like Christopher Reeve as Superman or something like that, that was the slogan. It was truth, justice, and the American way. And somehow, somewhere as time marched on, there were certain folks who just kind of gawked at that or kind of rolled their eyes. It was interesting to see how there was in some areas of pop culture, like there was kind of a growing resistance to that part. And we started to see that happen where like, I want to say it was in Man of Steel where it was Laurence Fishburne who was at the Daily Bugle, and he says lines like, does he still stand for truth, justice, you know, all that stuff. And everybody was like, whoa, what was that? What was that about? Like, that was intentional. That wasn't just some sort of clever dialogue writing. Like, they literally wrote out the American way in this reboot of Superman. And they tried to do it in a way that was like, just, oh, well, we'll just sweep it under the rug kind of thing. But it was not missed among the fans. So fast forward to where we are now. And I started thinking about, you know, when you think of the phrase American way, I sat down and I started thinking, okay, well, what does that encapsulate? Like what is the significance when you hear the phrase American way? And for me, I mean, like I said, I wrote down some notes here. To me, American way means to respect all people even when they don't agree with you. That's the American way. The American way is to strive to make yourself better in all things, whether it's your job or it's through personal development, whatever that may be. American way can mean that you protect everyone's rights and be a beacon to the world. And so there's a lot of significance when it comes to the phrase American way for me and for a lot of other people out there. It's not just some sort of corny tagline that was relevant in the late 30s and 40s, but then somehow became passé and ridiculous in today's world. It's still very much a relevant phrase to say. And I think even when I think of Superman, Superman is the American way personified. He is literally the visual representation of the American way. And if you think about when it comes to his backstory of being an immigrant, coming to this country, being adopted and raised by Americans here, and falling in love with the country to the point where he wants to protect the country, and then as a result, even protect the world. I think that I think there's just so much there that ties into what they were doing. And I mean, do you have anything to add to that? I don't want to go down my list and you secretly thinking oh, I want to say something.
No, I mean, I'm a bit cautious of time though too, because I mean it's going a bit long. But no, everything you're saying, I'm definitely picking up. It goes along with. There seems to be a fad of rewriting the characters or starting to just kind of erase what people think need to be erased versus what the fans have paid for and want more of throughout the course of the character's existence. Mm-hmm. And when you mess with that because you either think the fans want you to do that or you're trying to perhaps attract other people, who knows? But there has to be some motive that's behind the efforts to remove some of these well-known characteristics.
Sure.
And it's just not a healthy move to make, quite honestly. I mean, if you upset the core foundation of why we're seeing Superman on the big screen, reiterated and then reiterated again and then reiterated again, that money is going to go away because you're going to upset everybody or the people who want to pay you their hard-earned dollars.
Right.
And then they're going to go away, and then what are you going to be left with?
Yeah. And, one of the things, too, that I have written down on my list is that people who know me, and I mean, this.
I don't know who you are. I don't know who you are.
My younger brother.
I just thought it was a pretty cool setup you have in here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But one of the things that for friends and family that know me is that I have always been very outspoken as being a creative purist. And what I mean by that is that, so I am an artist. I am a creative. I work in the entertainment industry. I've worked in the corporate industry as well, but in terms of creative outlets. And there's a lot there in terms of when I say creative purist, I mean when I see something or read something that is original, right? There's some kind of character that was created. In this case, it's Superman. This character was created in the 1930s by two people, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And they went through a lot of effort. They went through a lot of trial and error in terms of trying to get their character realized. And if you look at their history, you could see it wasn't just we came up with this character, we had no problem, and we published it, and we're millionaires. It was not like that at all. And I think what's interesting is that it's very difficult as a creative to come up with something that's successful. And I don't say that lightly because it is like one of the biggest challenges that creatives have is how do we introduce a brand new IP with brand new characters and a brand new world that has staying power. And when it comes to Superman was arguably the first superhero. Like there's some people kind of like counter that saying, oh, maybe the Phantom was, or, they had other characters. But by and large, when we talk about the comic book industry and we talk about like, who is the superhero who has stood the test of time, who is absolutely iconic, it's Superman. And even when the comic book industry had certain ups and downs in terms of fan interest and the economy and that sort of thing, Superman was one of those characters that while other ones faded away and died off, he was resilient. In fact, he thrived through those various times of kind of economic uncertainty within the comic book industry. So it speaks a lot to what this character represents, how this character was created. And I'm finding that, and I've actually talked to you about this in a previous episode to a certain extent, but when it comes to these next generation of creatives, of artists, of writers, of publishers, whatever it may be, who have taken on the reins, who the torch has been passed to them. These are people who are given the keys and are the custodians. They are the caretakers of these celebrated IPs that have stood the test of time. And I'm finding that there is more and more of this arrogance that's going on, this almost narcissistic, I know better than everyone else does. I'm going to come in, and instead of having a humble approach where you approach the subject matter with humility and you're extremely grateful that you got the gig in the first place, that then you can then add to this particular canon, we're not seeing that as much. And there are these decisions that are being made that are, like they may appear small at first, but when you look at the context of everything, it's rewriting history of one of the characters. There's a lot of significance in that phrase American Way. And I don't know, like I just think about how it's ironic to me that a creative industry such as the comic book industry, like they're an entertainment entity. They specialize in being creative. Like, why can't they create original characters? Like that. I find it odd how there is this constant desire to change various characters that have been around for a long time, and they just feel compelled to have to make certain changes that, quite honestly, in certain regards, I mean, it fundamentally kind of changes the persona and the archetype and everything else. And I guess like what I'm thinking about as a creative purist is like, if you create, because like they even create new characters. I'm not saying that they're not doing that at all, but then like the majority of new characters or new comic books that get launched, they fizzle out. They don't have the staying power as these classic, iconic superheroes do. And that says something. It says that whatever the formula is that was created at the time that these characters were originated, that resonates in a very positive way with its fan base and with people who are familiar with that particular character. And you do not want to mess with that type of formula, basically. And my thing is that, like, again, I encourage having more of that creative expression where like you can just go to town, like launch brand new comic books, or maybe have new comic book characters that exist within pre-existing worlds. You can have a new character exist within the Superman world. That's totally fine. But you need to have it stand on its own 2 feet and see what happens. And if people are into it and they start buying it and everything and have it proliferate, then that's a very good thing. The other side of it is you have to see whether or not people are not interested in it. They shun it, and you have to go back to the drawing board. And that's just part of the challenge of being creative. And I think that it's, in a way, I think that a lot of the creatives in the comic book industry have gotten too used to being in a comfort zone with the pre-existing characters, both in Marvel and DC. We're like, we have this whole roster of characters. They're awesome characters. And I think it's great in terms of how, like, for instance, you have certain guest artists that come in, they're going to do a comic book cover, or they decide to do the entire comic book itself. That's perfectly fine when you lend your artistic style to a pre-existing world. It's when you start changing key elements of it that becomes a problem. And I know this is long-winded, but like the final item on my list that I was thinking about, because I was going back, just really kind of meditating on this notion of creating new IPs. And one of the stories that comes to mind for me was back in 2019, I was at Dallas Comic-Con, and Jim Lee, who is the chief creative officer over at DC, he was there. He was signing autographs on comic books. He was giving little like mini art workshop class type stuff. He was selling some of his own original work. It was awesome. It was like super exciting. I got to meet him. And I have the utmost respect for Jim Lee. He's my favorite comic book artist. I've got, like, look at this. This is Jim Lee right here. This, I absolutely love all the contributions that he's made. And what I think is memorable from that is I remember I was in attendance when he was doing like this little sketch workshop. He was doing like the basic fundamentals of how to draw a character. And I think he was doing like Harley Quinn or something. And as he was doing it, he was answering questions. He kind of opened the floor and he said, if you have a question, go ahead and ask it, and I'll call on you and then I'll answer or whatever. Well, one of the questions that was asked was, why have we not seen more original IPs get released over the years? Which is a great question. I mean, it wasn't a loaded question or anything. It was just, someone was just really curious about that. And I'll never forget his answer. He said that it's very difficult to successfully launch an original IP. That the last time that actually occurred was in his mind, and actually I pretty much agree with him to a certain degree, but like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is what he said. He said that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the last IP that had that level of critical and commercial acclaim, where it started out as a comic book, it got its own cartoon series, it got several movies under its belt, it had an arcade game made after it. Even to this day, it's still relevant. Like, you have people who are still big fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I found myself thinking about that and going, I think that it would behoove Jim Lee. Like I say this with utmost respect when I want to give unsolicited advice, but I do think it's important that he remembers some of those types of questions and how he answered them and apply them in a way that makes sense with DC, because I don't want him to constantly feel as though he has to make certain changes within these well-established iconic characters that, him being the talented chief creative officer that he is, he has a tremendous amount of influence and sway and authority when it comes to these types of decisions. Not to mention, like when he broke off from Marvel and he got a job at Image and he created his own, Wildstorm Studios and that sort of thing, he was creating all kinds of awesome characters, like the Wildcats, for instance, was a big one. He did Stormwatch. He's done a number of different groups of characters that he did out in rapid succession. So I think, for me, that's something that I want to see. And I have to say that I too disagree with this decision in terms of changing Superman's slogan to, have it go from truth, justice, and the American way to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. I feel as though that's the wrong call. And I'm pretty sure you agree with me. So I'm going to shut up and let you, if you have any kind of observations or comments regarding that. I assume we are aligned.
We are of the same wavelength there, Russ. I think the intention is positive. I mean, it's not a bad slogan, but what I said earlier is the motivation of erasing certain characteristics and adding new ones, and where does that stop?
Yeah.
Pretty soon you have a whole new character anyway. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to bring a whole new character out anyway, why not just make a whole new character? What risk is there in bringing a new IP with what you want to say with today's day and age versus the risk of losing the fandom from everything that they love and endear with the characters they've grown up with? And if to me the risk is lower bringing out a brand new character, giving them a different motto, giving them a different history, give them different beliefs, whatever they want to do, different swagger. I think the risk of that is lower than the alternative, than changing the characters that we've come to know and love.
Yeah, I definitely think that in terms of the just the artists and the writers and just all the creatives out there, I think that it doesn't do anyone any favors to rest on one's laurels. That I think that just pushing forward and taking those risks, taking those challenges, seeing what you can come up with. I have no doubt that they can come up with things that are just as cool in a different light, a different capacity, that doesn't marginalize or change other types of pre-existing characters. And also, too, let's not forget, like, having a character like Superman is one of the very few patriotic characters within all comic books. I mean, if you were to think of, say, the Marvel world, Captain America is the one who is patriotic. He's unabashedly so. Like, he is absolutely all about the American dream and what it's like to be American and all the responsibilities, from an idealistic standpoint. And I think Superman is that same type of character. He doesn't wear the stars and stripes, obviously, but in terms of how he's grateful for his upbringing. He's grateful for the country that he lives in. He has a profound love of where he's at, despite knowing that he is an immigrant from a different planet. His love is American, Lois Lane. And so I don't think it's fair to diminish also the nod that the two gentlemen who created Superman were very purposeful in putting together for that. So I don't know. I'm going to keep hoping that maybe they'll decide to switch it back.
Reverse the decision.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very easy thing to do, and we'll just have to wait and see.